You think you're good with money, but these 5 budget mistakes are quietly stealing thousands from your future, and you probably don't even know you're making them. Hey, welcome back. Today, we're breaking down the 5 most dangerous budget mistakes that are keeping you broke, and I guarantee you're making at least one of them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where your money is disappearing and how to stop the bleeding right now. Listen, I need to be brutally honest with you. Most people fail with their finances not because they're stupid or lazy, they fail because they're making critical mistakes without even realizing it. These aren't your typical, spend less money, tips. No. These are the sophisticated, hidden budget mistakes that even smart people make. The kind of mistakes that silently drain thousands of dollars from your life while you're sleeping, while you're working, while you're living your life. Here's the thing, I've been coaching people with their personal finances for over a decade, and I've noticed a pattern. The people who actually build wealth. They're not just earning more money. They're not just working harder. What they're doing is completely different. They've eliminated these 5 critical budget mistakes from their lives. And that's exactly what we're going to do for you today. Now, before we jump into the first mistake, I want you to grab a pen and paper or open your Notes app on your phone. Because as we go through each of these 5 mistakes, you're going to want to take notes. Some of these will hit you hard, and that's when you know it's something you need to pay attention to. One of these mistakes alone could be costing you between $500 to $2,000 per month. That's $6,000 to $24,000 per year. That's a car. That's a vacation. That's your child's education fund. That's your retirement dreams. So pay close attention because mistake number 3. That one catches everyone off guard. Alright, let's talk about mistake number 1. This is the most common one, and honestly, almost everyone does this. I did this for years before I realized what was happening. Mistake number 1 is, not tracking where your money actually goes. I know, it sounds boring. Nobody gets excited about tracking expenses. But here's why this is so critical, you can't fix what you don't measure. Think about it like this. If you wanted to lose weight, you wouldn't just hope and pray that the pounds fall off. You'd weigh yourself, track your calories, monitor your progress. Money is exactly the same. But here's what most people do instead, they just spend money without any awareness. They get their paycheck, they pay their bills, and then they wonder where all their money went. Sound familiar? I had a client named Sarah come to me completely frustrated. She was making $60,000 a year, which is decent money, but she was living paycheck to paycheck. She genuinely believed she had no money left at the end of the month. So you know what we did? We tracked every single rupee she spent for 30 days. Coffee runs, subscriptions she forgot about, impulse online purchases, eating out, delivery apps, everything. When we added it up, Sarah was spending the equivalent of 12,000 rupees a month on things she couldn't even remember buying. That's 144,000 rupees a year. And she had no idea. Not one clue. She thought her money was just disappearing into a black hole. But it wasn't. It was bleeding out through 1,000 tiny cuts. Every time she bought a coffee, every subscription she forgot to cancel, every food delivery order at midnight, these weren't individual mistakes. They were patterns. And patterns compound. The biggest shock for Sarah? She discovered she had 3 unused gym memberships. 3. She was paying for fitness that she never used. That alone was 2,500 rupees a month down the drain. When we cancelled those and tracked her spending properly, she freed up almost 20,000 rupees monthly. That's money she could finally use for her actual dreams, building an emergency fund, investing, paying off debt. So the first step to fixing your finances is becoming obsessively aware of where your money is going. Every single rupee. Now, the question is, how do you actually track your money? You don't need fancy apps or complicated spreadsheets. You just need something simple that you'll actually use consistently. Some people use apps like Inab or Money Manager. Some people use basic Excel spreadsheets. Some people literally write it down in a notebook. The method doesn't matter. What matters is that you're tracking. Here's my recommendation: start with your phone. Most phones have a Notes app. Write down every single expense for the next 30 days. Coffee? Write it down. Gas? Write it down. That pack of chips from the convenience store? Write it down. At the end of 30 days, add it all up and categorize it. Food, transportation, entertainment, subscriptions, everything. When you do this simple exercise, something magical happens. You become aware. That awareness alone changes your behavior. Studies show that simply tracking your spending makes you spend less without even trying. You start thinking twice before buying that coffee because you know you'll have to write it down. You start remembering that unused subscription and you cancel it. But here's the real game changer: once you track for 30 days and see where your money is going, you can identify the leaks. The unnecessary expenses. The habits that don't serve you. And then you can make conscious decisions about what stays and what goes. Maybe you decide that 3 gym memberships are ridiculous and you keep only 1. Maybe you realize you're spending 800 rupees a week on delivery apps and you decide to cook at home instead. Maybe you find 5 subscriptions you completely forgot about and you cancel them immediately. This is not about being cheap or depriving yourself. This is about being intentional. It's about spending money on things that actually matter to you and eliminating waste. Once you've eliminated the waste, you've freed up money for your actual financial goals. And that's when real wealth building begins. Alright, so you've started tracking your money. Amazing. You're aware. But here's where most people fail next, and this is mistake number 2, having no clear financial goals or actual budget to work towards. Think about building a house. You don't just start throwing materials together and hope it turns out okay, right? You have a blueprint. You have a plan. You know exactly what you're building and how much it's going to cost. Your finances are the exact same way. Without clear goals and a budget, you're just wandering around financially blind. Here's what happens to most people: they earn money, they spend money, and they have no idea where they're going financially. It's like getting in a car without knowing your destination. You're just driving, burning fuel, and hoping you end up somewhere good. That's not a plan. That's chaos. I had another client, Marcus, who came to me making really good money, over 100,000 rupees monthly, but he felt like he had nothing to show for it. No savings, no investments, nothing. I asked him a simple question: Marcus, what are your financial goals for the next 5 years? He stared at me blank. He literally had no idea. He'd never thought about it. So we sat down and created goals. Short-term goals like building a 3-month emergency fund. Medium-term goals like paying off his credit card debt. Long-term goals like buying a house and retiring comfortably. Once he had these goals written down and clearly defined, something shifted. He now had direction. He now had a reason to make smart financial decisions. Then we created a budget based on those goals. We allocated his income to different categories: essential expenses, debt repayment, emergency fund, investments. Suddenly, every rupee had a purpose. Every spending decision aligned with his actual goals instead of just random impulses. Without this clarity, you're vulnerable to every temptation that comes your way. Marketing, peer pressure, lifestyle inflation, all of it can pull you off track because you never had a track to begin with. But with clear goals and a budget, you have armor against all of that noise. So how do you actually create clear financial goals? It's simpler than you think. You sit down, maybe with a cup of tea, maybe with a family member, and you ask yourself these questions: where do I want to be financially in 1 year? In 5 years? In 10 years? Do you want to own a house? Write it down. Do you want to be debt-free? Write it down. Do you want to travel the world? Do you want to retire early? Do you want to start a business? Do you want financial security? Write it all down. Don't filter yourself. Don't judge. Just write down what you actually want. Then, prioritize. Which goals matter most to you right now? Maybe paying off debt is your number one priority because the interest is killing you. Maybe building an emergency fund is first because you're one medical emergency away from disaster. Maybe saving for a house is your dream. Whatever it is, rank them. Once you have your goals ranked, you create your budget around them. This is the critical part that most people miss. Your budget isn't about restriction. Your budget is about allocation. You're allocating your money towards the things that matter most to you. If your goal is to buy a house in 3 years, you're allocating a percentage of your income towards that down payment fund every month. Here's the magic: when your budget is tied to your actual goals, you don't feel deprived. You feel motivated. Instead of thinking, I can't spend money on this, you're thinking, I'm choosing not to spend money on this because I'm investing in my house fund, or I'm investing in my freedom, or I'm investing in my dream. This shift in mindset changes everything. Marcus went from feeling broke despite making good money to feeling wealthy because he was making intentional choices aligned with his goals. His budget became his map to the life he actually wanted to live. Alright, here we go. This is mistake number 3, and I told you this is the one that catches everyone off guard. This is the mistake that destroys more wealth than almost anything else. This is lifestyle inflation. Let me explain what lifestyle inflation is. It's when your spending increases proportionally with your income. You get a raise, and suddenly your expenses go up to match that raise. You get a promotion, and your spending increases to match your new salary. You inherit money, and instead of investing it, you spend it. You get a bonus, and instead of saving it, you upgrade your lifestyle. Here's why this is so dangerous: lifestyle inflation is invisible. It sneaks up on you. You don't wake up one day and think, hey, I'm going to ruin my financial future by spending all my new money. No, it happens gradually. Slowly. Almost without you noticing. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you're making 50,000 rupees a month and you're living comfortably on that. You've got your rent paid, your bills covered, your basic needs met. Then you get a promotion. Now you're making 70,000 rupees a month. That's 20,000 more rupees every single month. That's amazing, right? But here's what happens. You think, well, I deserve a nicer apartment, and you move somewhere that costs 5,000 more. You think, I should drive a better car now, and suddenly you've got a car payment of 8,000. You think, I can finally afford to eat at nice restaurants, and your food budget jumps up 4,000. You think, why not get that gym membership and the premium membership, and that's another 1,000. You just gave yourself a 20,000 rupee raise and now you're spending all of it, or more. You're still living paycheck to paycheck. Nothing has changed except now you have higher fixed expenses and higher expectations. You've trapped yourself in a higher lifestyle that requires a higher income just to survive. And here's the worst part: when unexpected expenses come up, you have no cushion. Because all your money is allocated to your new, inflated lifestyle. A medical emergency. A job loss. A crisis. You're devastated because you've committed every rupee to maintaining your new standard of living. So how do you avoid this trap? How do you get a raise or come into money and actually use it to build wealth instead of just upgrading your lifestyle? The answer is, you have to be intentional about it. When you get more money, you don't automatically increase your spending. Instead, you allocate that extra money towards your financial goals. Your house fund. Your investment account. Your business. Your freedom. Here's what I recommend: when you get a raise or bonus, split it. Maybe 50% goes towards improving your lifestyle, because yes, you deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and 50% goes towards your financial goals. So if you get a 20,000 rupee raise, maybe 10,000 goes to lifestyle improvements and 10,000 goes to savings and investments. Or even better, keep your lifestyle the same and put all the extra money towards building wealth. I know that sounds extreme, but think about it. If you're already living comfortably on 50,000 rupees, why do you need to spend 70,000 just because you're making it? You don't. You just think you do because of social pressure and because you feel like you deserved it. Here's a real success story. I had a client named Priya who got a significant promotion and a 50% salary increase. Instead of upgrading her lifestyle, she kept living exactly the same way. She took that extra money and invested it. Over 10 years, through compound interest and smart investing, that extra money she didn't spend turned into over 2 million rupees. 2 million. That could be her down payment on a house. That could be her early retirement fund. That could be her financial freedom. All because she resisted lifestyle inflation. All because she didn't need to upgrade her apartment or her car or her status when her income increased. This is how wealthy people think differently. They don't equate more income with more spending. They equate more income with more opportunity to build wealth. And that mindset shift is everything. Okay, moving on to mistake number 4, and this one is absolutely critical: not building an emergency fund. This is the foundation of financial security, and yet most people completely neglect it. Here's what I see happen all the time. Someone comes to me and says, "I'm ready to invest. I'm ready to build wealth. I want to get rich." And I say, "Great, do you have an emergency fund?" And they look at me confused. They don't even know what an emergency fund is or why they need one. An emergency fund is exactly what it sounds like: money that you set aside specifically for emergencies. 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses sitting in a separate savings account that you don't touch for anything else. It's like financial insurance. It's your safety net. Here's why this matters so much. Life happens. You can plan perfectly. You can budget perfectly. You can make all the right financial decisions. And then your car breaks down and it costs 50,000 rupees to fix. Or you lose your job unexpectedly. Or you have a medical emergency. Or your roof leaks. These things happen to everyone. The question is, are you prepared for them? When you don't have an emergency fund, what happens? You panic. You go into debt. You put it on your credit card. You borrow money from family. You take out a loan. And suddenly, that emergency that was supposed to be a temporary problem becomes a permanent financial burden because now you're paying interest on it. I had a client named Rajesh who didn't have an emergency fund. He was doing well, making decent money, but he'd never prioritized building one. Then his mother got seriously ill and needed surgery. The surgery cost 150,000 rupees. Because Rajesh didn't have an emergency fund, he went into debt. Now he's paying back that debt with interest for the next 2 years. The medical emergency became a financial crisis. If he'd had an emergency fund of 150,000 rupees saved up, he would have paid for the surgery cash. No debt. No interest. No stress. Problem solved. So how do you build an emergency fund? The first step is deciding how much you need. The standard recommendation is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Let's say your basic living expenses are 30,000 rupees a month: rent, utilities, food, transportation, everything. 3 months would be 90,000 rupees. 6 months would be 180,000 rupees. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a lot of money. I can't save that much. I get it. It feels overwhelming. But here's the thing, you don't have to save it all at once. You build it gradually, over time. Here's my recommendation: start small. Aim to save your first month of expenses first. That's your initial goal. Once you hit that, celebrate it. You've got a 30,000 rupee emergency fund. That's real progress. Then work towards 2 months. Then 3. Then eventually 6. How do you do this? You take money from your budget. Remember we created that budget aligned with your goals. You allocate a percentage of your income to your emergency fund. Maybe it's 5% of your monthly income. Maybe it's 10%. Whatever you can afford without making your life miserable. Put that money in a separate savings account. Not your regular checking account where you might be tempted to use it. A separate account at a different bank if you have to. Make it slightly inconvenient to access so you don't touch it for non-emergencies. And here's the critical part, an emergency fund is for emergencies only. Not for vacation. Not for that new phone you want. Not for impulse shopping. It's for genuine emergencies, job loss, medical crisis, major home or car repairs. When you use it for an actual emergency, you replenish it afterwards. This single habit, building and maintaining an emergency fund, will change your life. It gives you peace of mind. It protects you from going into debt when life throws curveballs. It's the foundation of financial security. Alright, we're at the final mistake, and this one is absolutely critical because it determines whether you just save money or actually build wealth. Mistake number 5, not investing your money and letting it sit idle. Here's what most people do. They finally get their act together. They start tracking expenses. They create a budget. They stop lifestyle inflation. They build an emergency fund. They're proud of themselves. And then they stop. All their extra money just sits in a savings account earning practically nothing. In India, a standard savings account gives you maybe 3 to 4% interest annually. That's pathetic. That's not wealth building. That's just slow money. Meanwhile, inflation is eating away at your purchasing power. If inflation is 6% and you're earning 3% in your savings account, you're actually losing 3% in real terms every single year. Your money is getting weaker, not stronger. Here's the truth about building wealth. You cannot just save your way to financial freedom. You have to invest. You have to put your money to work. You have to make your money make money. That's how wealthy people think. I had a client named Aisha who saved 200,000 rupees over 2 years by cutting expenses and being disciplined. She was so proud, and she should have been. But then she just left it sitting in her savings account. I asked her, Aisha, what's your plan for this money? She said, I'm keeping it safe. I said, you're keeping it safe from growth. I convinced her to invest it. She put 100,000 into a diversified mutual fund and kept 100,000 in her emergency fund. Over 10 years, with compound interest and market returns, that 100,000 grew to over 350,000. She didn't add another rupee to it. She just invested it and let compound interest do the work. That's the power of investing. That's how you transform savings into wealth. Without investing, you'll never build real wealth.